happened when Darth Vader had a lightsaber duel with Boba Fett. Boba Fett may not be force sensitive, but that doesn't mean he couldn't handle himself with a lightsaber, putting up a good fight even against Darth Vader himself. On orders from Grand Moff Tarkin, both Darth Vader and Boba Fett were on the hunt for the Imperial deserter, Han Solo. After refusing to give up his bounty, Vader slammed Boba into a wall before lifting his lightsaber above his head to enact the killing blow. To Vader's surprise, Boba ignited a lightsaber, blocking Vader's strike. Offended that a mere bounty hunter would use such an elegant weapon, Vader attacked Boba with fury. Despite Boba's skill, Vader was eventually able to back him into a corner and disarm him. However, during the duel, Solo had managed to escape, with Vader going on to pursue him, saving Boba from almost certain death. Who was the only Force wielder that Boba Fett was scared of? Boba Fett was the best bounty hunter in the galaxy, perhaps of all time. Despite not using the Force, Boba Fett had little fear of Force sensitives, believing he knew their weaknesses and therefore how he could defeat them. However, during a mission from Darth Vader, he would come across a slain Gorog, one of the most fierce creatures in the galaxy. Boba Fett would conclude that it must have been the work of his prey, the insane rogue clone of Galen Marek, otherwise known as Starkiller. Realizing he may be outmatched due to the clone's insanity, he instead went after Starkiller's love interest. When Vader ordered him to help kill Starkiller, he demanded his payment up front, believing that he would most likely be killed. Although Vader and Boba would go on to defeat him, this was one of the few times that Boba actually showed fear and reluctance in facing off with a Force wielder. What happened to the girl that hit on Darth Vader? After the death of Padme, the Dark Lord of the Sith showed little affection towards anyone. His monstrous nature also meant that few women sought to woo the Dark Lord of the Sith. However, there was one. A young nurse of the Dark Lord became obsessed with Vader, even going so far as to collect pieces of shrapnel that she had removed from his body. She called them souvenirs of their unspoken love and forget-me-nots. In her dreams, she imagined marrying and kissing the Dark Lord, hoping to see him without his mask. She imagined how he would protect her as she cared for his wounds and every need. On one occasion, Vader forgets to take his cape and she gives it a good sniff, adding it to her box of forget-me-nots. However, the Doctor catches her throwing her souvenirs into the trash compactor. She even goes into the trash compactor to find her beloved box. She decides that the time has come to confront the man she loves and tells him he's beautiful. However, Vader only stares at her blankly before shoving his lightsaber into her chest, killing her instantly. Why did Vader never upgrade his suit? Vader's suit was slow, heavy and cumbersome, while also causing him a great deal of pain and many sleepless nights. In Legends, Vader had the chance to upgrade his suit. This suit would have allowed him to come closer to his full potential, giving him the speed of Anakin Skywalker but the strength of a droid. However, this procedure was risky and would have possibly led to the Sith Lord's death. Secondly, the suit itself was a reminder to Vader of all the evil things he had done, as well as keeping him in near constant agony, deepening his connection to the dark side. By upgrading his suit, Vader would have likely become a far more powerful duelist, but he would have lost a large part of what made Vader, Vader. Less physical pain would have given him a clearer mind, thus resulting in the resurgence of Anakin Skywalker and the regrettable memories that brought him. Why couldn't the Jedi sense Palpatine was a Sith Lord? The Force-wielding Jedi could sense the presence of others as well as their feelings, so why couldn't they sense that Palpatine was a Dark Lord of the Sith? Despite many within the Order sensing a plot to destroy the Jedi, and even that the dark side surrounded the Chancellor, the Jedi were unable to deduce Palpatine's true identity as Darth Sidious. There were several reasons for this. First, Palpatine was highly proficient in the ability Buried Presence, which allowed him to hide his Force sensitivity and his malign intentions from the Jedi. Second, the Jedi had built their temple upon an ancient Sith shrine as a symbolic victory over the Dark Order. This was a huge mistake, as Palpatine was able to use the shrine to boost his own powers of concealment. Lastly, the Jedi had fallen into complacency and arrogance, believing that the Sith were destroyed for over a millennia and that they would never return. The Jedi had purged any teachings of the Sith from the Order and were so fearful of the dark side they no longer understood what it was. The Jedi were not well practiced in seeking out the dark side, allowing Palpatine and the rule of two Sith to hide in plain sight. Why did Luke Skywalker use a forbidden lightsaber crystal for his green lightsaber? After Order 66 and the rise of the Empire, kyber crystals were heavily regulated, and ownership of them was usually illegal. After losing his lightsaber on Cloud City, Luke Skywalker was in desperate need for a new lightsaber. However, obtaining a new lightsaber crystal proved to be very difficult, and in Legends, Luke was forced to use a technique most commonly used by the Sith, and deeply frowned upon by the Jedi Order. For thousands of years, the Sith had used the Force and blast furnaces to create synthetic lightsaber crystals. Unlike naturally occurring lightsaber crystals, they weren't necessarily attuned to the light side of the Force and were therefore deeply frowned upon. However, desperate times called for desperate measures. Through teachings left by Obi-Wan Kenobi himself, Luke Skywalker was forced to create a synthetic lightsaber crystal for use in his green lightsaber. Why could the pearl from a krayt dragon create the most powerful lightsaber? The immensely powerful krayt dragon was one of the most feared beasts on the planet of Tatooine. Over the course of their long lives, krayt dragons ingested stones which would be broken down over time by its digestive system. If they ingested a kyber crystal, it would create a krayt dragon pearl. These pearls were exceedingly valuable and were considered to be the greatest trophy that a monster hunter could acquire. If incorporated into a lightsaber, this saber produced an immensely powerful blade that emitted a strange howling sound when ignited. However, killing a krayt dragon was no easy task, and it was even harder to correctly install the pearl into a lightsaber, making these sabers very rare. Why was Jedi killer General Grievous so weak in Revenge of the Sith? Grievous was one of the most proficient Jedi killers in known galactic history, even holding off several Jedi Masters at once. However, Grievous struggled to hold his own against any of his opponents in the third Star Wars movie, and he had a crippling cough. While the out-of-universe reason is that they did not fully develop the character that would appear in Revenge of the Sith when making the cyborg an absolute powerhouse in the original Clone Wars TV series. However, Mace Windu is seen using the Force Crush technique on Grievous during the Battle of Coruscant, severely weakening the Kalish General and giving us the more cowardly General Grievous we know and love. What was the disturbing reason why Jabba the Hutt forced his favourite dancer to wear strange makeup? Over the course of his 600-year life, Jabba the Hutt became notorious for his love for female dancers, who were most often Twi'leks. However, his favourite dancer was a female Asgardian, known as Yana Dal Gargan. As a young Huttler, Jabba had been very close to his mother, and when he first laid eyes on Yana, he believed that her larger size resembled that of a Hutt. He forced the Asgardian dancer to wear special makeup designed to make her look more like Jabba's late mother. This allowed her to become his favourite dancer, while also keeping her safe from the Rancor pit. What was the devastating ability only Starkiller could use? Starkiller is known as one of the most powerful characters ever seen in Star Wars. Among his force feats was downing a Star Destroyer using only the power of his mind, as well as defeating the terrifying creature, the Gorog. As we all know, Force Lightning was an extremely powerful force ability used only by the most powerful Darkseid users. However, Starkiller was a true revolutionary with the Force, taking the Force Lightning ability to new levels. This included being able to attack multiple opponents at once, as well as imbuing his saber with lightning to increase the blade's intensity. Most powerful of all, however, was the ability known as the Lightning Bomb. Starkiller was able to use the Force to stop the lightning from leaving his body, charging him up until it eventually exploded in a violent burst, vaporizing anyone in his vicinity. Here's why Palpatine feared the Jedi with yellow lightsabers the most. By the time of the Clone Wars, the Jedi Order had become dominated by the users of green and blue lightsabers, the Consulars and the Guardians. The Consulars focused on studying the Force, while the Guardians focused on peacekeeping. Although powerful, these schools of thought had become disconnected from the wider galaxy, and many citizens no longer trusted these Jedi. However, wielders of the yellow lightsaber, the Sentinels, believed in a balance between the study of the Force and training as a warrior. They also believed that not all answers could be found within the Force, learning many skills from the other citizens of the galaxy, while also using their Jedi knowledge to aid developing worlds. After Order 66, many Jedi Sentinels used their real-world skills and support within local populations to evade elimination. Therefore, Palpatine feared that if any group of Jedi were to overthrow him, it would be the yellow lightsaber-wielding Sentinels. What excuse did Vader give for his defeat by Obi-Wan Kenobi? The defeat of Anakin Skywalker at the hands of Obi-Wan Kenobi was a pivotal moment in the galaxy, preventing Anakin from reaching his full potential and solidifying his fate as Darth Vader. Obi-Wan Kenobi was almost completely outmatched by Anakin, both in raw force ability and with a lightsaber. However, Obi-Wan closely adhered to the Jedi way and kept a level head, while Anakin gave way to his arrogance and overconfidence, ultimately sealing his fate. Interestingly, Vader does not admit it was his dark side arrogance that led to his defeat, but his inexperience. He explains that Obi-Wan had been given many more chances to duel opponents during the Clone Wars, while the Jedi had held him back, leading to his defeat on Mustafar. How did Darth Maul survive falling down a reactor shaft and getting cut in half? The infamous duel between the Dark Lord of the Sith and Obi-Wan Kenobi left Maul dismembered and disposed of down a seemingly endless reactor shaft. To the surprise of many, Maul survived. However, it was at the cost of his sanity. As he fell, Maul was filled with rage and hatred, strengthening his connection to the dark side more than ever before. After grabbing onto a vent, Maul fell into a garbage container. However, the container began to shake uncontrollably as a ship picked it up, On transit to the junk planet of Lotho Minor, when arriving on the planet's hellscape, Maul focused in on the dark side and his teachings, using it to fabricate himself a set of legs from pieces of junk. Remaining in the depths of the planet for over a decade, Maul was completely overcome by the dark side, his lust for revenge against Obi-Wan Kenobi, driving the Dark Lord to insanity. How did Dooku plan on using General Grievous to overthrow Palpatine? Dooku was instrumental in the transformation of Grievous into a cyborg, orchestrating a fatal crash that would require the Kaleesh to augment his body with cybernetics for his continued survival. As all Sith desired, Dooku wanted more power and hoped to one day overthrow Palpatine. As part of his plan, Dooku bathed Grievous's mortally wounded body in the blood of his old friend, Cypher Dyas, hoping that Grievous would become force sensitive. He also altered his brain to become more aggressive. He hoped that this force sensitivity, combined with the added aggression and his cybernetically enhanced body, would provide Dooku with a truly terrifying dark-side wielder that could one day defeat Palpatine. Fortunately for Palpatine, this procedure would fail, with Dooku scorning Grievous as a failure. Palpatine would learn from this experience by ensuring that Darth Vader's cybernetic suit was nowhere near as powerful as Grievous's. This blade was a lightsaber wielder's worst nightmare. Lightsabers in the hands of the Force sensitive were incredibly deadly and struck fear into the hearts of their opponents. However, one weapon that was particularly useful against lightsaber wielders was the Cortosis blade, and even Darth Vader would almost meet his demise at the hands of one of its wielders. Blades with a thin lining of Cortosis were lightsaber resistant, similar to Beskar. Although very rare and expensive, pure Cortosis blades did exist and could short out a lightsaber blade for minutes upon contact. Cad Bane took this a step further, utilizing a Cortosis bullet to short out lightsabers from a distance. Here is the crazy story of IG-88. Everyone knows IG-88 was one of the best bounty hunters in the galaxy, second only to Boba Fett. But did you know he actually came very close to conquering the galaxy? IG-88A was created around 15 years before the destruction of the first Death Star. His programming allowed him to become self-aware, and he escaped along with 3 other IG-88 units, planning to exterminate all organic life in a droid revolution. Taking over the droid manufacturing world of Mechas 3, the IG-88 would upload a code into all the droids manufactured there that, when activated, would cause a droid revolution. After Boba Fett destroyed 3 of the IG-88 units, the remaining IG-88 would upload his consciousness onto the second Death Star, using his control to hit Palpatine in the face with a door. However, before he could use the second Death Star to broadcast the code to start his revolution, Lando Calrissian would blow up the hypermatter reactor, killing IG-88 and his plans with him. Did lightsabers ever run out of battery? Lightsabers were powered by an extremely energy-dense diateum power cell. The energy from the power pack would then be focused and amplified through a kyber crystal, before passing through a magnetic ring that caused the plasma to turn back on itself, creating an incredibly energy-efficient system. While a small amount of energy would be emitted as light and heat energy was pretty much negligible. However, a lot of energy would be expelled when cutting through blast doors, clankers, or lightsaber jewels. If a Jedi regularly used their lightsaber, they would have to charge it on the Coruscant Jedi Temple every few years, although it is known that some Jedi who relied heavily on the Force never needed to charge their lightsabers throughout their lifetimes. Why was Dooku's lightsaber almost perfect? As a Jedi, Dooku was one of the only Jedi in the waning days of the Republic to specialize in the second form of lightsaber combat, that focused heavily upon lightsaber-on-lightsaber combat, possibly being its greatest ever practitioner. Adding to his dueling prowess, Dooku modified his saber by curving the hilt. This allowed the blade to be emitted at a slight angle, disorientating his opponents with its unorthodox design. It also allowed Dooku to move his blade more quickly if he was caught in a saber lock, as seen in Attack of the Clones against Obi-Wan Kenobi. I was Plo Koon, the only Jedi Master to ever beat Grandmaster Yoda. Despite being 900 years old, Yoda was able to defeat Master Windu and Master Dooku, 2 of the greatest duelists of all time. However, Plo Koon was able to defeat Yoda during a sparring session. But why? Plo Koon was a master of Form 5 lightsaber combat, specializing in the Xian variation. This was a well-rounded form, allowing for a powerful offense and defense, while also being highly effective at deflecting blaster bolts. However, it has also been noted that Plo Koon has shown proficiency in the aggressive and fast-paced Form 4, the same as Grandmaster Yoda. The combination of these 2 forms made Plo Koon proficient against multiple lesser opponents, as well as individual masters of the lightsaber. This perfectly matched the Grandmaster's technique, which relied on a flurry of fast-paced attacks, allowing Plo Koon to succeed against Yoda where many others had failed. Why were pink lightsabers so rare, and what was their meaning? The purple lightsaber was exceptionally rare, and used only by Force wielders who found balance between the light and the dark. However, there was also a rare variation of the lightsaber that was pink or magenta in color. The only way of acquiring one of this color was by obtaining a Dantari kyber crystal. These crystals could only be found in the incredibly rare eggs of the Kimrath, a species native to Dantooine. Just like in Star Wars canon, these crystals would change color depending on the force alignment of the wielder. While these crystals were usually blue or green, they could also come in rarer colorations, such as yellow, purple, red, and even pink. The meaning of pink lightsabers is not exactly known, although we do know that Palpatine gifted a magenta crystal to his most trusted Sith assassin, Mara Jade. Judging by the fact that she used a purple lightsaber after her redemption and marriage to Luke Skywalker, we can deduce that pink and magenta sabers may have more of a dark side alignment than the more common purple lightsaber. Which Jedi did the clone troopers love the most? Many Jedi saw the clones as simple, dispendable soldiers of war. However, other Jedi treated the clones with a great deal of respect, and for that, they were admired by the troopers serving under them. The clones of the 104th, dubbed the Wolfpack, served under Plo Koon, and they held him in especially high regard. The clones had been taught from a young age that they were pretty much just cannon fodder, but Plo Koon rebuked this, telling the clones that they were not expendable, earning him great respect. The Wolfpack were such big fans of the Jedi Master that they painted a picture of two clones and Plo Koon's face with the words "Plo's Bros" written above on the side of their gunship. How did Luke Skywalker learn the truth about Padme's death? During the events of the Dark Nest crisis, R2-D2 was experiencing technical issues. While Luke tried to fix his memory core, he discovered a crack in his memory banks. Eventually, R2 displayed a 50-year-old recording. It was Anakin, revealing his Force visions of Padme's death to his wife. Luke takes the droid to a slicer to find out more. Luke then discovers a recording in which Padme reveals to Obi-Wan that she is in love with Anakin, the first time that the Jedi would learn his mother's name. Later on, R2 was forced to reveal another tape. This time, Anakin's promise to Padme that she would not die in childbirth. This unsettled Luke, as Anakin held Padme not in a loving way, but in a possessive way. However, the next tape was so distressing that Luke was forced to meditate for several days. It was the killing of the younglings at the Jedi Temple. The final few tapes showed the vile act of Anakin force choking Padme, as well as her final death during Luke and Leia's birth. A flurry of emotions washed over the Grand Master, including grief, anger, but also relief that it was not his father who killed Padme. Was there any Sith that used their powers for good? Well, yes, sort of. Darth Vader was a mining businessman, but after his workers discovered an ancient dark side reservoir, he shut down all operations due to the negative effects on his employees. Discovering that he himself was force sensitive, he studied this anomaly and eventually went looking for the Sith. Taking on the name Darth Vader, he discovered the dark side ability known as Force Phantom. However, his strong code of ethics would prevent him from fully falling to the dark side, and he used his powers to build a successful mining empire. He died surrounded by loved ones and friends, an extremely uncommon occurrence for a Sith Lord. How did Luke Skywalker end up marrying an Imperial assassin? Born shortly after Order 66 and trained by Emperor Palpatine in the ways of the dark side, Mara Jade became one of the Empire's most proficient assassins. As part of the Emperor's hand, she hunted down many Jedi, as well as corrupt Imperials. She was so trusted by the Emperor that he employed her to spy upon Vader himself. Vader would betray Palpatine, but managed to kill him, sending her into a deep depression. After masquerading as a smuggler for many years, she eventually encountered Luke. However, despite her hatred for him, she was forced to work with him to survive on the planet, as their force powers had been blocked by creatures known as Yuslavo Miri. Later on in the comic, Mara and Jade are forced to fight a dark side clone of Luke Skywalker and his Dark Jedi Master. Mara kills both of them and renounces the dark side. After a few years, Luke fell for Mara and the pair married. Eventually, she gave birth to their son, Ben Skywalker, a powerful force sensitive. Why was Moff Gideon so terrified of Luke Skywalker? Up until the end of Season 2 of The Mandalorian, Moff Gideon remained fearless. That was until Luke Skywalker showed up. Luke Skywalker was considered the legendary embodiment of chaos among Imperials. Not only did Luke manage to help destroy 2 Death Stars, from the perspective of the remaining Empire, Luke defeated the Emperor and also took out Darth Vader single-handedly. Knowing full well how powerful these space stations and Sith Lords were, any Imperial Moff would quiver in fear at the thought of the being who defeated them. Luke is the last known remaining Jedi, and a powerful one at that. It would be safe to assume that Moff Gideon watches on in terror, knowing that his Dark Troopers nor his plans stand a chance against the legend of Luke Skywalker. What happened when Darth Vader encountered C-3PO on Cloud City? After C-3PO was blasted to pieces on Cloud City, the parts were brought to Vader. When laying eyes upon the droid, he experienced a vision of himself as a young slave boy, and the great excitement that finding and fixing the droid had brought him. However, the flashback would take a dark turn and he remembered the horrendous conditions he and his mother had suffered as a slave. Disgusted by this memory, he ordered that the droid be dismantled and melted down. However, C-3PO was rescued by Chewbacca before soon falling into the hands of Vader once more. The Dark Lord experienced another flashback of his mother's encouragement of a young Anakin to fix and rebuild the droid. Vader then showcased the light that was still within him, ordering the Imperials to return the droid to Chewbacca. What did Obi-Wan think when Vader killed Palpatine? Obi-Wan and Yoda originally believed that Anakin had been so consumed by the dark side that he couldn't possibly be redeemed back to the light. When Luke handed himself into the Empire in an attempt to turn Vader to the light, Kenobi was filled with regret that he didn't do more to convince Luke that Vader was irredeemable. In fact, Obi-Wan was urging Luke to kill Vader during their duel on the second Death Star. When Vader threw his master down the elevator shaft to save Luke, Kenobi was shocked and would later be filled with regret that he did not see the goodness buried deep down in his former apprentice. He would later remember an old teaching from his former master, Qui-Gon Jinn, about forgiveness, and would realise that his unwillingness to forgive and accept Anakin for his crimes had ultimately pushed him further to the dark side. Why did General Grievous hate his Magnaguards? It was no secret that Grievous hated droids, even his Magnaguards. The reason for this stems from well before the Clone Wars. Before he was encased in his cybernetic armour, Grievous was revered as a demigod on the backwards world of Kali. Grievous had led a group of elite Kalish warriors, known as the Isvoshra, against the invading Huk, winning many battles as brothers in arms. However, this all would change when Dooku planted a bomb on his ship. All Grievous's warrior brothers were killed as a result, and the Kalish required drastic cybernetics in order to survive. The general hated his new droid-like appearance, as well as the new droids he was given to command. Grievous viewed them as incompetent and an inferior replacement to the Isvoshra, with many droids, including Magnaguards, meeting their end at the hand of Grievous. Did blasters ever run out of ammunition? Instead of having to take around heavy ammunition, blaster users would take around little cartridges called gas packs. These were made up of 100 different kinds of gases, and the chemical makeup depended upon the type of blaster bolt. The gas was superheated into a plasma bolt. Some blaster bolts were more powerful, but were often more expensive. For a standard E11 blaster, one cartridge could provide over 500 shots, and it was very easy to carry around several packs at once. However, despite having a lot of ammo compared to traditional slug throwers, blasters could overheat, this being their biggest drawback. Why didn't Dooku have Sith eyes? Vader, Palpatine, Maul and many others could be distinguished as dark side users due to their vivid yellow eyes. Despite being Palpatine's apprentice for over a decade, Dooku does not display this trait, as Darth Plagueis the Wise would explain to a young Palpatine. Physical abnormalities such as Sith eyes formed not due to how long someone had been using the dark side, but because of how much they immersed themselves in it. This is why Anakin had Sith eyes almost straight after becoming Darth Vader, while Dooku did not. Dooku did not fully immerse himself, as his goals were to reorganize the galaxy to gain more political rather than force powers. What happened when Darth Vader found a picture of Jar Jar Binks, Obi-Wan and Padme? A short while after revealing his true identity to Luke Skywalker, Vader was compelled to travel to the planet of Naboo. Here, he hoped to find clues of Padme's death that may help him find Luke Skywalker and punish those who hid his son from him. Filled with remorse and regret, Vader stood in the lush fields of Naboo, reminiscing on his time with Padme. Later on, Vader was attacked by one of Naboo's gigantic sea creatures, forcing him and his entourage to flee into an old Gungan structure. This structure turned out to be a commemoration of Naboo's victory over the Trade Federation. A large painting depicted Palpatine, Jar Jar Binks, Kenobi, a young Anakin, and of course his dead wife, Padme Amidala. A former handmaiden of Padme explained that Naboo mourned Skywalker's death as well as Padme's. The regret and sadness the Dark Lord had felt visiting Naboo bubbled up into anger, with the Dark Lord going on to smash the painting with his lightsaber. Does Earth exist in Star Wars? Many assume that the galactic city of Coruscant is actually Earth in the far future, but this is certainly not the case. Star Wars takes place in the distant past, with Coruscant actually first being inhabited by the precursors to the Mandalorians, the Tang, and the precursors to humanity, the Zell. However, in Legends, we sort of get to see Earth. In a What If comic, Han Solo and Chewbacca do a blind hyperspace jump, accidentally ending up in our solar system. Crash landing on Earth, they are soon brutally attacked, with the natives misidentifying Chewbacca as a Sasquatch. Han Solo is impaled by arrows and dies aboard the Millennium Falcon soon after. 126 years later, an archaeologist named Dr. Jones found the Millennium Falcon, declaring that they should leave the so-called monster as part of the Great Unknown. What was Palpatine's Order 65? Order 66 stated that in the case of the Jedi betraying the Republic, the Chancellor would be able to order the clones to eliminate them which Palpatine of course used to great effect to destroy the Jedi. However, in the event that the clone contingency orders were discovered, Palpatine wanted to ensure that the orders did not look as though they were solely set up to eliminate the Jedi. He therefore created Order 65, which decreed that if the majority of the Security Council or the Senate believed the Chancellor unfit for duty, he was to be arrested or even executed by the clones. However, as Palpatine was perhaps the most beloved man in the galaxy at the time of the Clone Wars and had taken control of the corrupt Senate, it was extremely unlikely it would ever be carried out, therefore giving the orders a veneer of legitimacy while also absolving Palpatine from any accusations. Who was the Jedi that Plagueis believed could defeat Palpatine in a duel? Unlike Palpatine, his master Darth Plagueis had a healthy fear of the Jedi's power. Before the events of the Phantom Menace, Plagueis cautioned Palpatine that there was a Jedi who could quite likely beat Palpatine, and even himself, in a duel. What's more, this Jedi was not rigidly held to the doctrine of the Jedi, and Plagueis worried about the future of the Sith Grand Plan if he ever became Grand Master of the Jedi Order. This Jedi did not believe that the Order should be subservient to the Republic, as he saw it as a weakness Palpatine and Plagueis wished to exploit. This powerful Jedi was possibly the most gifted lightsaber duelist the Order had seen in many years. His name was Dooku. At this time, Dooku was a powerful Jedi Master, and Palpatine only a Sith apprentice. It is very likely that Dooku was more powerful than the future Emperor during this period. Ultimately though, Palpatine would corrupt the Count, eliminating the threat of a Jedi Order led by Dooku. How was Starkiller so powerful in the Force? Starkiller is presented in the Force Unleashed games as one of the most powerful Force wielders to ever live. He even had his own Force ability in which he could vaporize a large group of enemies using the dark side. As well as being highly Force sensitive, Starkiller had one of the most proficient teachers of the dark side, Darth Vader. Starkiller was also not burdened with the knowledge or skills of the light side, or more intellectual parts of the dark side. Starkiller only focused upon the combat capabilities of the dark side, in which he truly mastered and excelled. Why were stormtroopers so bad at hitting their targets when compared to the clones? This was actually due to several reasons. Firstly, the quality of the soldiers coming into the Stormtrooper Corps was much worse than the Jango Fett genetically engineered clones. Second was training. Clone troopers had been trained how to use and fix military equipment pretty much from birth. A lot of the Stormtroopers only had a few months training as adults, and this training was nowhere near as effective as it had been on Kamino. What's more is that the Stormtroopers were trained to work in large numbers, much like B-1 battle droid, the idea being that overwhelming firepower was more effective than smaller numbers of elite troops. Next is their helmets. These gave the user a high degree of protection from flashbangs and other weaponry, but it greatly reduced their visibility. Next is the Force itself. As we see in Rogue One, Shiru is able to walk directly into enemy fire on the Battle of Scarif, so that he can help restore balance in the Force by helping the Rebels attain the Death Star plans. Therefore, the Rebels and clones benefited from the Force's influence, which favoured the light side of the Force, while the Stormtroopers suffered with bad luck and bad aim. Here's why Project Blackwing was so terrifying. Originally created by Sith scientists thousands of years before the Empire in an attempt to discover the secret of immortality, the sickness was a potent pathogen capable of reanimating the dead. When a victim became infected, it would quickly eat through their flesh, causing them to sweat and turn a greyish colour. All the while, they would be experiencing terrifying hallucinations of dark entities pulling at their insides. Death was ultimately inevitable to all that was infected. After death, the corpse would begin rapidly decomposing, before rising once again as an undead zombie, under the control of the collective consciousness of the virus. During the Imperial era, Vader would attempt to weaponize the virus under the codename Project Blackwing. After an accidental escape, the virus would infect many thousands, and it was only after an intense quarantine of the virus by the Empire that it was ultimately defeated. What was the illegal blaster rifle that fired invisible blaster bolts? One of the main drawbacks of a blaster was how obvious they were to detect. Blaster bolts' brightness made covert operations very difficult, even for the most skilled bounty hunters and military personnel. The Empire wished to conduct secretive assassinations, and therefore developed the Night Stinger rifle. It could only fire 3 to 5 shots before the blaster gas canister needed replacing, with each canister costing around 1,000 credits. However, the blaster bolts were completely invisible. This was particularly useful when used in conjunction with a redirection crystal. When the invisible bolt was fired at the crystal, it would redirect the bolt while also adding coloration, allowing the Empire to frame unsuspecting citizens for their brutal extermination. Did any Jedi use red blades? Red blades have become synonymous with the dark side of the Force and the Sith. However, there were a few exceptions to this. Jedi Master Adi Gallia was known to utilize an exceptionally rare red kyber crystal. This imbued her saber with a red blade used most commonly by the Sith. However, after the revelation of the Sith's return, she was pressured into adopting a blue blade. Luke Skywalker and Leia were also seen using red blades. Leia used a red lightsaber for a time that had been gifted to her by Luke. Luke also used a shorter red blade in conjunction with his regular saber to defend against the highly unorthodox light whip on multiple occasions, although it is unknown why it possessed this coloration. How was Starkiller's armor better than Darth Vader's? Vader and Starkiller both wore fearsome armor inspired by the Sith warriors of the Old Republic era. Both sets of armor were designed to cause the wearer pain and constant irritation, fueling their power in the dark side. However, Starkiller's Mandalorian-inspired Sith Stalker armor offered several advantages over Vader's. While Vader's suit had been deliberately designed to weaken him and prevent him from overthrowing Palpatine, Starkiller's armor was designed during the Old Republic era to turn dark side disciples into fearsome Sith assassins. Therefore, it was specifically designed to avoid hindering the user's agility and force abilities. For example, the Sith Stalker armor left some biological flesh exposed, while also being resistant to lightning attacks. Unlike Vader's suit, this allowed the wearer to utilize the Force Lightning ability, and even provided Starkiller with some degree of resistance to Force Lightning. Which ancient Sith did Vader and Palpatine idolize as the perfect Dark Lord? Palpatine and Vader admired many of the ancient Sith of old, and for many different reasons. However, Palpatine admired one Sith Lord more than most, telling Vader he should follow in his footsteps. This Sith was, of course, Darth Malgus, the warrior who had sacked the Jedi Temple. Malgus was a pure weapon of the dark side, fully embracing his own suffering to increase his power. He even killed his own lover to prevent himself from becoming weaker. Just like Vader, Malgus had also been injured by a Jedi, but instead of letting his injuries defeat him, he became stronger than ever before. Palpatine gifted Vader with ancient texts about Malgus, hoping it would inspire him to become a powerful Sith enforcer, just like Malgus. Why did Cad Bane wear breathing tubes, despite not needing them? Cad Bane was one of the most talented bounty hunters of the Clone Wars era, becoming renowned for his skill in hunting down Jedi. Despite not being Force sensitive, he was an admirer of the Mandalorian culture, seeking to emulate their use of weaponry to defeat Force sensitives. Cad Bane was a member of the Duel species, who like most species in the galaxy breathed oxygen, so the tubes simply served as a means of protection against Force users. The tubes would provide Bane with oxygen directly into his body, mitigating the risk that the Force choke ability would affect him and making him an even more formidable opponent. How did the Imperials react to Vader appearing for the first time? The Imperial officers first viewed Vader as a simple brute, offering him little respect. In retaliation, Vader killed a few of these officers, displeasing Palpatine, who told him he did not wish to rule over a galaxy of dead men. The Imperials continued to treat Vader with disrespect, and eventually he discovered that some high-ranking officers had attempted to assassinate him. With Palpatine's blessing, Vader sought to teach the Imperial officers a lesson. The Emperor called a meeting, explaining that any order from Vader should be treated as an order directly from himself. Vader then stepped forward, explaining how some unknown officials had tried to kill him. He then called forth 5 random officers, force choking them to death. This show of force shocked the Imperial officers, instilling a deep fear of the Dark Lord, and few ever questioned him again. What happened when Darth Vader fought Darth Maul? Darth Maul and Darth Vader were 2 of the most fearsome lightsaber duelists to ever exist. In Star Wars Legends, Vader faced a doppelganger of the deceased Maul. He had been created by a dark side cult and possessed all the same skills and abilities of the original Maul. During their duel, Maul mocked Vader for being a Jedi, landing a few blows against the Dark Lord. Maul seemingly beat Vader, but just before he could land the killing blow, Vader stabbed himself through the stomach, also impaling the Zabrak warrior. Palpatine then showed up to congratulate Vader, claiming to have nothing to do with Maul's resurrection. What was the largest droid in all of Star Wars? Droids were usually designed to resemble bipedal species and were not usually much larger than organics. However, some droids of ancient legend dwarfed even the Death Star, many millennia before the Clone Wars, and in a neighbouring galaxy to the Star Wars galaxy. A great war between 2 droid races broke out. One race were known as the Silentium, with the 2 largest of these droids said to be around 50 kilometers in diameter. However, their opponents, the Abominor, were even larger. Abominor collected material to grow even larger, and it was said the largest of these droids were the size of planets. The 2 droid species were eventually defeated by the Yuzong Vong, with the remnants of both species fleeing to the Star Wars galaxy. Why was Sith called Darth, and what did it mean? Many Sith chose to add Darth to their name, this being a deep-rooted tradition even by the time of Darth Revan. Many galactic historians consider this to be a contraction of the title Dark Lord of the Sith, but the title is in fact much more ancient. 30,000 years before the Clone Wars, the brutal dark-side-wielding Rakatan Infinite Empire arrived on the planet Korriban, the homeworld of the ancient Sith, gifting them with advanced technologies. The Rakata would eventually try to invade the Sith, but the Sith would repel them, the first species to do so. As well as new technology and understandings of the dark side, the Sith would also take aspects of the Rakatan language, including the title Darth. It is possible that Darth came from the combination of the Rakatan word Dar, that meant triumph, and Tar, that meant death. Therefore, Darth could mean victory over death, or immortality, an obsession that many Sith held. Alternatively, it could mean victory through death, meaning the conquest of one's enemies through the dark side. Here's why hyperspace was actually really terrifying. Despite being regularly used, no one actually understands what hyperspace is or how it works. One species, the Charon, were involved in a hyperspace incident that left them in a strange dimension known as other space. More mundane incidents, such as flying into a star or black hole, were a regular occurrence in the galaxy. Furthermore, hyperspace could sometimes lead for travelling backwards or forwards in time, for unexplained reasons. In legends, looking out at hyperspace for too long could lead to a form of madness, known as hyperspace rapture, although it is known that Darth Vader enjoyed its intoxicating effects. How did Palpatine react to Yoda's death? Yoda was one of the most powerful Jedi to ever live, and the last surviving Jedi that actually posed any serious threat to Palpatine's reign. In the Return of the Jedi novelization, an extended conversation between Palpatine and Luke takes place in which he learns of Yoda's death. By probing Luke's mind to find out more about who trained him, he discovers that Yoda has survived for some time after Order 66 and that he had recently passed away. Satisfied that his arch-enemy was now dead, he responded by saying, "Ah, he lives not. Very good," mocking the way the late Grand Master spoke. What was the extremely powerful lava lightsaber from Mustafar? The vast majority of Jedi and Sith used a blade made of extraordinarily hot plasma. However, there was a blade which differed significantly from ordinary lightsabers. Instead of the traditional kyber crystal found on Ilum, this blade used a crystal forged in the fiery depths of Mustafar. Known as the lava crystal, it produced a less concentrated and less focused blade than a regular lightsaber. However, this didn't make it any less powerful. Instead of plasma, the blade's consistency was more similar to lava, making it heavier and therefore allowing for more brutal strikes. However, this was not what made it so dangerous. Due to its lava-like consistency, the blade would constantly spit out flames and would even splash molten lava into the face of opponents, making it extremely deadly. Why did Palpatine have the most well-crafted lightsaber in Star Wars? Despite being one of the greatest duelists of all time, Palpatine held great disdain for lightsaber combat, seeing it as inferior to dark side force powers or political manipulation. However, Palpatine owned two of the most elegantly designed sabers of all time. These sabers were decorated with vast amounts of electrum, a metal that was symbolic in Jedi culture and showcased a mastery over the Force. The meticulous electrum design was not only meant to show his vast wealth, it was directly utilized to mock his opponents by suggesting he was far stronger in the Force than even the greatest of Jedi. Here's why the Rule of Two was a stupid idea. As highlighted in yesterday's video, the Rule of Two era Sith sought to do away with the Sith infighting that had hindered the Order for millennia, only allowing the strongest to survive. However, there were two major problems with this system that ultimately led to its failure. Firstly, unlike the early practitioners of the Rule of Two, the apprentice did not necessarily defeat their master in a fair fight. For example, Palpatine killed Darth Plagueis in his sleep, costing the Sith the secret of immortality. Secondly, the Rule of Two did not take into account that some Sith could turn to the light. This ultimately led to the destruction of the Sith, as Vader killed Palpatine after being redeemed by Luke Skywalker. This was not without historical precedent, as Darth Revan returned to the light side and killed his Sith apprentice, Malak, without more Sith to rise to the rank of Dark Lord of the Sith due to the Rule of Two. The Sith Order was ultimately very vulnerable. How powerful was red Force Lightning? Force Lightning comes in a variety of different colours and power levels. Plo Koon used a less powerful version of this technique, known as Electric Judgment, which emitted yellow lightning. Electric Judgment used emotions of justice, therefore making it far less powerful than the blue or purple Force Lightning, which tapped into feelings of pure hatred. Red Force Lightning was by far the most powerful and was typically used by Force entities such as the Sun, but could also be used by some mortals that were born with this ability by chance. Not only did Red Force Lightning provide much more powerful lightning bolts, it also had the ability to completely strip an opponent of their connection to the Force. Did any Jedi use blasters as their primary weapons? Blasters were seen by most Jedi as uncivilized and not compatible with their light side philosophy, as they were primarily used for offense. However, one Jedi splinter group, known as the Grey Paladins, disagreed. This Jedi offshoot believed that abilities that use the Force, such as Force Push or Pull, were a form of domination over the Force, akin to Sith abilities. They preferred to focus on other tasks, such as proficiency with blasters, using the Force to augment and perfect their current abilities. One Grey Paladin became so skilled with a blaster that she could deflect incoming blaster bolts with her own blaster bolts. She was so accurate that she could send her blaster bolts straight down an enemy's barrel, disarming them and turning her blaster into a defensive tool, like the Jedi lightsaber. Did you have to be born a Force sensitive to use the Force? All beings were born with a connection to the Force, although some naturally had a stronger connection to the Force. However, this connection would slowly fade over time if not trained properly, and it was possible for those with weak connections to the Force to become more connected through training, as was the case with Obi-Wan Kenobi. However, certain Force objects and entities were able to imbue non-Force sensitives with this power. Abeloth was able to attain godly levels of power through drinking from the font of power and bathing in the pool of knowledge. The Ones imbued the hive mind of the Killiks with the Force in an attempt to build a prison for Abeloth, allowing them to fly through space unprotected and move asteroids with their minds. Thousands of years later, a failed Jedi initiate named Hazen used dark-side artifacts to dramatically increase his powers, even giving him the infamously powerful Red Force Lightning. What made Darth Vader's lightsaber extra deadly? The lightsaber of Darth Vader struck down more Jedi in combat than any other in galactic history. In previous videos, we've outlined why Vader himself was so good at killing Jedi. However, his brutality and effectiveness was certainly helped by the design of his lightsaber. Vader spent a lot of his free time tinkering and fine-tuning his saber for maximum blade power and stability. One of the major alterations he made to the saber was the addition of a dual-phase focusing crystal. These crystals allowed the Dark Lord to alter the length of the blade at the push of a button, forcing his opponent to adjust to the new length, with Vader often using this moment of confusion to quickly dispatch of his enemies. Were there any hot Jedi? Despite generally being lazy, greedy, and a repugnant species with a poor connection to the Force, there surprisingly was one Hutt that joined the Jedi Order. 400 years before the Battle of Endor, a young Huttlet named Beldorian was taken in by the Jedi Order, attaining the rank of Jedi Knight. Maybe unsurprisingly, he and a fellow Jedi fell to the dark side. After killing his Jedi friend, he took over the planet, ruling over it for over 400 years. He managed to escape the Jedi Purge and would only be disturbed 13 years after the Battle of Yavin by the Jedi Callista Ming. After imprisoning the Jedi, he drew the attention of Grandmaster Luke Skywalker and Leia Organa. After briefly capturing Leia, she escaped, engaging the Dark Jedi in a duel. Although he was powerful in the Force, she eventually emerged victorious after she cut the Hutt in half. What happened when Darth Vader visited Padme's grave? When Darth Vader was encased in his metal suit and learned of Padme's death, almost all remnants of Anakin Skywalker died. Engulfed in pain and guilt, Vader tried his best to bury any thoughts of his wife. Due to the constant medical attention he required after the events of Mustafar, he missed her funeral. However, under direct orders from Palpatine, Padme's body was not to be cremated and was placed in a mausoleum on Naboo. After experiencing Force visions of Padme blaming him for her death, he eventually went and visited her grave, paying his respects to his dead wife for the first time and, as far as we know, also the last time. Could lightsabers be used as a laser gun? The lightsaber was a fearsome weapon in the hands of a Force user, but it did have one major disadvantage: the inability to combat opponents at a distance. However, the ancient Jedi had clearly sought to rectify this issue by developing the Lightsaber Rifle. Similar to the Death Star, this rifle focused and amplified energy through a kyber crystal, producing a devastating blast of energy. This rifle was used by the Jedi librarian Jocasta Nu against Darth Vader shortly after Order 66. However, the rifle had a major drawback. It used lightsabers as ammunition, melting them after only a few shots. So while it was very powerful, it was also not a very What happened to Anakin's former slave master, Watto? Anakin always blamed his former slave master for his mother's death, and his enslavement by him left Anakin with a deep hatred for the Toydarian. However, after his transformation into Vader, it is revealed in his personal diary that he actually used the Sith version of a Jedi mind trick to attempt to break the mind of a Toydarian. He notes how the Toydarian will soon die if its existence is made extremely painful. While it is unknown if this is definitely Watto, it does seem very likely, as Vader was on Tatooine around this time and would have had little other reason to torture and kill a random Toydarian. After all, vengeance is the currency the Sith deal in. How did the Mandalorians nearly weaponize the space slugs? During the Mandalorian Wars, Arcanian scientists sought to weaponize the space slugs, known as the exogorths. Exogorths fed on raw materials such as asteroids and planets, but due to their rarity, slow reproduction, and long periods of hibernation, were not much of a threat to the citizens of the galaxy. However, the Arcanian scientists were able to biologically enhance them to grow even larger and reproduce at an accelerated rate, making them ravenously hungry for raw materials. They also cybernetically implanted hyperdrives into the space slugs, allowing them to control their movements. Theoretically, whoever controlled these creatures could have stripped star system after star system in a matter of days, attempting to sell the weaponized space slugs to the highest bidder. The Mandalorians reluctantly bid in an attempt to keep them out of the Republic's hands, although Mandalore the Ultimate saw little use in destroying planets. Fortunately, a pacifist scientist who worked on the project was able to use the exogorths to kill the other Arcanian scientists and release them into wild space, sparing the galaxy from this terrifying threat. Why did Palpatine fear Qui-Gon Jinn? During the Phantom Menace, Palpatine orders the Sith assassin Darth Maul to go and hunt down Jedi Master Qui-Gon Jinn, as he believed he was a danger to the Sith plan. But why? Qui-Gon Jinn was one of, if not the, most free-thinking Jedi, believing that the Order had become too involved with Republic politics. The Sith master plan relied on the fact that the Jedi would support the Republic unconditionally, which would ultimately lead to their downfall during the Sith-orchestrated Clone Wars. Qui-Gon's questioning of the Jedi's role in the Republic worried the Sith. What's more, Qui-Gon was a believer in the Chosen One prophecy that was said to destroy the Sith and bring balance to the Force. If Qui-Gon had survived the duel on Naboo and had trained Anakin, he would have been more of a father figure to Anakin than Obi-Wan was, and it is likely he would have vanquished the Sith far earlier than he did in our timeline. How was the life of a TIE pilot so awful? Unlike the Republic, the Empire viewed its soldiers as simple cannon fodder. This is probably seen most clearly with the introduction of the TIE fighter, unlike the X-Wing, which was designed to be high quality and make up for the Rebels' small numbers. The TIE fighters were cheap, dangerous, and meant to be used in vast numbers. The lack of shields and poor design saw many TIE pilots explode in a violent inferno. An even worse fate was for the ship to be partially damaged and thrown off into the vacuum of space. The Empire rarely came back to rescue these pilots, as it was much cheaper to simply replace them, leaving them to drift through the galaxy until they ran out of oxygen. Why did Palpatine destroy the droid army when he could have used them in the Imperial military? The last episode of The Bad Batch demonstrated how the Empire was busy dismantling and melting down trillions of fully operational battle droids while simultaneously looking for cheap alternatives to the clones. So why would Palpatine do this if he had ultimate control over the droid army and could have used it in conjunction with the clones to crush any dissent within the galaxy? Well, the first reason was political. Many within the core worlds saw Palpatine as their saviour, while also hating droids for their role in destroying many worlds during the Clone Wars. By using the CIS droids, many of his most loyal and powerful allies would have questioned his leadership, not something Palpatine wanted to risk in the early days of the Empire. What's more, Palpatine was able to use dark-side Sith techniques to influence organic soldiers, further increasing his control over his army, while also elevating his own power. What was the most powerful lightsaber design? Exar Kun was a Dark Lord of the Sith, active over 4,000 years before the Clone Wars. Originally a Jedi Knight, his quest for Sith knowledge would eventually lead him to fall to the dark side and modify his saber. This saber hilt was the length of a regular saber, but could emit 2 plasma blades if desired. Exar also imbued it with the dark side, allowing it to easily cut through Beskar armor at its highest power setting. Both blades were also independently adjustable in length, allowing for an extremely unorthodox fighting style that was highly versatile. Exar Kun's dark side alterations imbued a sense of dread into Jedi close to it, and would later have to be quarantined by the Jedi Order due to its affinity to the dark side. Why did Darth Revan use a purple lightsaber? Throughout his long life, Revan was seen using almost every blade colour, including blue, green, red, and most famously purple. As both the Jedi and Sith, Revan was a warrior of justice. Sadly, his desire to seek justice against evil led to hatred and lust for revenge, eventually culminating in his fall to the dark side due to his quest to defend the galaxy against the true Sith vitiate. Over his 350-year life, Revan was redeemed and fell back to the dark side several times. Just before his death, Revan was seen using a purple lightsaber, representing his use of the dark side for more noble reasons than a traditional Sith would, and his lack of affiliation with either the Jedi or the Sith Empire. Who are the Imperial Royal Guards and how were they trained? The Imperial Royal Guards were hand-selected for their loyalty to the Empire and their skills in combat. They would then be trained on the harsh world of Yinchor, where they learned a martial art that would turn their bodies into a living weapon, their reflexes becoming so fast they could sometimes block blaster bolts with their melee weapons.
They would often fight to the death with their classmates, with only the strongest progressing to the next level. Vader would then visit, brutally killing one of the trainee guards to show the dominance of the Sith and to inspire the others to train harder. After only 2 remained, they would be brought to Palpatine. They would then be forced to fight to the death one last time to show their loyalty to the Emperor. The remaining trainee would then ascend to the rank of Imperial Guard. Here's the sad history of the Jawas and Tusken Raiders. The Tusken Raiders and Jawas are portrayed as some of the most stupid species in Star Wars, but in actuality, they were both the descendants of an ancient spacefaring race. Tatooine was once a beautiful and lush planet, with the inhabitants known as the Kumunga, covering the planet in technologically advanced metal cities. Against the wishes of the species elders, the Kumunga began exploring the stars. However, their elders were right, and the Kumunga were enslaved by the Darksider race known as the Rakata. The Kumunga would rise up against the Rakata, who would retaliate by glassing the lush planet of Tatooine. The Kumunga would survive in caves, devolving into the Jawas and Sand People over many thousands of years, eventually returning to the now barren surface of their planet. The Sand People and Jawas would vie for dominance over the planet. Eventually, mining corporations would discover Tatooine, while the Sand People would see the loss of large portions of their ancestral homeland to the settlers. The Jawas would become traders, spreading across the galaxy once again. Why was the first Jedi Purge even more devastating than Order 66? The first Jedi Purge was perpetrated almost 4,000 years before the events of the Clone Wars. This was a challenging time for the Republic and the Jedi. Exar Kun, Mandalore the Ultimate, and Darth Revan had all attempted to conquer the Republic in the half-century leading up to the first Jedi Purge, severely weakening both the Jedi and the Republic. 3 Sith had risen to power on Malachor 5, calling themselves the Sith Triumvirate, led by Darth Traya and her Sith apprentices Darth Sion and Darth Nihilus. The Sith orchestrated civil wars and crises. Darth Traya attempted to corrupt the remaining Jedi to the dark side, while Sion trained an army of Sith assassins to hunt down those who did not fall to the Sith cause. The remaining Jedi met on the planet Katar, with Jedi Master Atris leaking the information in the hopes of drawing the Sith out into the open. However, Darth Nihilus would use his obscene power to consume the life force of the planet, decimating the Jedi. Fortunately for the Jedi, a former ally of Revan, Mitra Surik, would ultimately defeat the Sith and save the Jedi Order. Who was the last surviving Jango Fett clone? CT-6116 served as a medic for the 501st Legion and was known to his comrades as Kix. Kix began investigating the inhibitor chips after the mysterious circumstances surrounding Tup and Fives, eventually discovering Order 66 and the Sith's machinations. However, his prying eyes did not go unnoticed, and before he could tell his comrades, he was captured by the CIS forces and placed in stasis. The Separatist ship would be shot down, and Kix remained frozen in stasis for over 50 years. He was eventually found by the Crimson Corsair, a pirate who donned the scarlet mask of a Kaleesh warrior. After being informed of the events that had conspired over the past half-century, he realised he no longer had a purpose, and so he joined the crew of the pirates. Was there a Sith Chosen One? The Jedi had long prophesied the coming of the Chosen One, a being who would bring balance to the Force. The Sith also had their own version of this, known as the Sithari. The Sithari was said to be a great leader, but would destroy the weak Sith to make way for a stronger and more powerful order. Many believe Darth Bane to be the Sithari, as he destroyed the Sith Order and instigated the rule of 2 Sith Lords. Others, such as Palpatine, believed himself to be the Sithari, although his ultimate defeat, which led to the elimination of the Sith, suggests he may have been mistaken. What was Order 99? Darth Sidious's grand plan for the destruction of the Republic and the Jedi was meticulously thought out and culminated in the successful elimination of the Jedi by Order 66. However, Palpatine realised that if Order 66 did not work and a large portion of the Jedi survived, there would have been civil war without end. He therefore implanted a similar code within Droid Army that would have switched the Droid Army to the side of the newly formed Empire, further diminishing the chances of the Jedi's survival. This code was used once as a test to see if the droid's primary programming and allegiance could be switched, the reasoning being that if it would work on the droids, it would work on the clones. This was of course successful, paving the way for Order 66 and the destruction of the Jedi Order. Was there a Sith version of the Jedi Sentinels? One of the most iconic Jedi from the Clone Wars TV series were the Jedi Sentinels. However, the Empire also had mask figures known as Imperial Sentinels. These were clones that had been biologically and technologically manipulated by the dark side of the Force into mindless drones for the Emperor. Over twice the size of a regular Imperial Guard, the Imperial Sentinels used large vibroactors and heavy battle armor to defeat their enemies. They were heavily utilized by a reborn Palpatine in the Dark Empire period. How did Palpatine create Darth Vader's suit so quickly? The events of Revenge of the Sith make it seem as though mere hours have passed between the events of Mustafar and Vader's encasement in his now legendary suit. However, the novelization of Revenge of the Sith suggests that it was actually a few days between these two events, giving Palpatine a little more time to order its creation. What's more, Vader's suit had been based upon previous Sith cyborgs and the recently deceased General Grievous, meaning it took little time to create, especially for someone with as much wealth and resources as Palpatine.
Why did Luke Skywalker want Jedi to get married? The Jedi had long forbade its members from forming attachments, fearing it could lead to the dark side. This mantra was seemingly proven true with Anakin's fall to the dark in a bid to save his wife from dying. However, Luke did not see it this way. He believed that it was in fact Anakin's isolation from the Jedi that had caused his fall. He argued that if Anakin had been allowed to discuss his feelings with Padme and received help, he would not have been so easily seduced by Sidious. Furthermore, Luke realized that attachment was not aligned with the selfish Sith ideology. After all, Vader had been pulled from the dark side through the love of his son, and so Luke encouraged attachment in his new Jedi Order. Why was the Obi-Wan versus Vader duel on the Death Star so anticlimactic? Vader's duel with Obi-Wan on the first Death Star does not involve many of the acrobatic stunts or impressive swordsmanship seen in the other duels. This is largely due to the history that the pair shared, with Vader being especially cautious during this duel. Vader was keenly aware of his defeat on Mustafar, a fact he was constantly reminded of by the excruciating pain he suffered within his suit. Therefore, Vader feared Obi-Wan and his incredibly efficient defensive lightsaber style, and took extra precaution against the Jedi Master, in the fear he would be defeated for a second time, leading to a duel that many have described as anticlimactic. Why didn't Aayla Secura wear traditional Jedi clothing? Aayla Secura is one of the few Jedi to do away with Jedi robes in favour of more revealing clothing. However, she actually did this for a very good reason. Twi'leks were one of the most popular slave races, and many were used as entertainers for crime syndicates against their will. Sadly, many would look down upon the species because of this. Secura hoped to break these harmful stereotypes, donning the clothing of a Twi'lek entertainer, even though she was a Jedi. She hoped that this would inspire young Twi'lek girls, who would see that just because they were Twi'leks didn't mean they couldn't be successful. Why doesn't Darth Vader use Force Lightning? Force Lightning had become synonymous with the Sith and the dark side by the time of the Clone Wars. Despite this, Vader did not, primarily due to his suit. However, other Sith that utilized cybernetic suits, such as Darth Malgus, could still use Force Lightning, so why couldn't Vader? Palpatine purposely built the suit to be lower quality and extremely conductive of electricity. He did this in order to weaken Vader, preventing him from ever overthrowing his master. As a side effect of Palpatine's machinations, it prevented the Dark Lord from being able to use Force Lightning, just in case he accidentally fried his own life support system. Why was Darth Revan's lightsaber crystal sacred to both the Jedi and the Sith? Darth Revan is remembered as the conflicted Sith, utilizing lightsabers of almost every color to represent his changing affiliation in the Force. Therefore, it seems fitting that one of the sabers he was rumored to use was sacred to both the Jedi and the Sith. Known as the Heart of the Guardian, this lightsaber crystal provided its wielder with increased speed and power through the Force and emitted a yellow blade with a red hue. This crystal was said to have been instrumental both in the creation of the Sith and Jedi Order. Although it seems likely, both orders' reverence of this crystal points to one common origin story from tens of thousands of years before the Clone Wars. Sith legend taught that its return would bring their dominance throughout the galaxy, while the Jedi believed it would bring the galaxy's salvation. What were Tarkin's final thoughts before the Death Star exploded? Many of the Empire's elites believed the Death Star to be truly invincible, including Palpatine and of course Tarkin. During the Battle of Yavin, he refused to evacuate, it being an absurd possibility to him that a small number of X-Wings could defeat the Death Star. As Luke's proton torpedoes raced towards the core, Tarkin remained calm, assured by his overwhelming arrogance that they could not possibly destroy the battle station. However, as he reassured himself, he became filled with more and more doubt. Before he could realize the true danger he was in, the Death Star exploded, vaporizing the Grand Moff instantly. What is the disturbing reason why Boba Fett has a braid of hair on his armor? 5 years after falling into the Sarlacc pit, Boba Fett seems to have softened up and is determined to rule firmly but fairly. However, in both canon and legends, Boba Fett has had some pretty brutal and morally questionable moments, his service to Jabba the Hutt and the Empire being obvious examples. One change Boba has made to his armor since turning good is the removal of a blonde braid of hair on his right shoulder, and this is for a good reason. In canon, some have theorized that this braid is the hair of a fallen Padawan, slain by Boba years before the original trilogy. In legends, the braid was said to be made from a Wookiee scalp, with Boba collecting this gruesome trophy after helping the Empire subjugate the Wookiees of Kashyyyk.
Was there a hell in Star Wars? It is well known that light side users could return from the netherworld of the Force to interact with the living, while the Sith could not. So what happened to their spirits? While little information exists, ancient Sith texts have postulated that the Sith spirits will be eternally damned to an area of the Force netherworld known as Chaos. Here the Sith are forced to eternally plot their revenge against their enemies, but are driven insane by the confines of their prison. In Legends, Palpatine was able to return from Chaos with the help of some unknown Sith Lords. However, it is also known that after his spirit was finally vanquished, the spirits of the dead Jedi and other heroes worked within the netherworld to contain his nefarious spirit.
Is Ahsoka Tano a grey Jedi? Ahsoka's departure from the Jedi Order and adoption of white lightsabers has led many to speculate that she may be a grey Jedi. So what actually is a grey Jedi, and does Ahsoka qualify as one? As we explored in the recent video series on grey Jedi organisations, they could come in many different varieties and forms. However, one characteristic did unite them, an unwillingness to follow either the Sith or the Jedi codes. So, by this standard, Ahsoka is certainly a grey Jedi. However, there were also other definitions of grey Jedi. For example, Force users who served authoritarian governments, such as the Mandalorian Knights, Knights of Zakul, and Imperial Knights, were considered grey Jedi, regardless of whether they used the light or the dark side. Due to the grey Jedi's loose definition, as well as the fact she has not been seen utilising the dark side, the jury is still very much out on this one. Let me know what you guys think down below. How powerful was Darth Malgus? Palpatine famously sacked the Jedi Temple through manipulation, treachery, and rigorous planning, in line with the philosophy of the rule of two Sith. However, almost 4,000 years before the Clone Wars, a Sith known as Darth Malgus also sacked the Jedi Temple and Coruscant itself, using only his brute force and competence as a Sith general. Much like Vader years later, Malgus was a cybernetic warrior, brutal in his quest against the Jedi. He also knew that one's own hardship and pain strengthened their connection to the dark side, with Malgus going so far as to kill his own love interest. Malgus led his armies from the front, allowing his rage and focus to flow through him as he cut down Jedi, further strengthening his connection to the dark side. Enhanced through the dark side, as well as powerful cybernetics, Malgus was famed for his overwhelming power strikes. As well as being a highly proficient duelist, he was a master of Force lightning and capable of using it on several opponents at once. How were the droidicars paid for with exotic meats? The droidicars were designed by the insectoid-like species known as the colicoids. The colicoid modelled the droidicar after themselves, with this species also being able to travel pretty quickly through rolling up into a ball. While these droids were formidable, they cost over 200 times that of a regular B1 battle droid. In an attempt to bargain with the colicoids, the Trade Federation offered them a fine selection of the best meats from across the galaxy. This offer was accepted, and so the Trade Federation acquired the highly effective droidicar at a heavily discounted price in exchange for a few shipments of meat. How did Maul become a Sith Lord? Maul was a Zabrak, born on the planet Dathomir to the leader of the Night Sister clan, Mother Talzin. Talzin was a power-hungry individual and sought to become the apprentice of Darth Sidious. While initially considering her, he realised that Maul would be far more loyal and useful for his plans, capturing the young Zabrak. After taking him under his wing, Sidious would begin brainwashing him to hate the Jedi and training the young Zabrak in the art of the lightsaber. However, he did not teach him many of the more advanced dark-side powers to prevent him from becoming too powerful. After all, Maul was simply a pawn in Palpatine's plans and was never meant to overthrow the Dark Lord.
This is what Obi-Wan thought the first time he saw Darth Vader. A few months after Order 66, Kenobi would ponder whether he should have left his friend to die on Mustafar. Coincidentally, a holonet detailing how an Imperial enforcer had hunted down a group of Jedi on Kashyyyk disturbed Kenobi's peace. When it was revealed that the enforcer's name was Vader, Kenobi would be filled with dread and panic. A local would advise him not to mention Vader again, telling Kenobi he had enslaved all the inhabitants of Kashyyyk. Filled with regret, Kenobi would wonder if his abandonment had resulted in Anakin falling further to the dark side, further filling Kenobi with pain and regret.
How was Kit Fisto one of the most powerful Jedi during the Clone Wars? Despite being killed by Palpatine in mere seconds, Jedi Master Kit Fisto was in fact one of the most talented lightsaber wielders in the galaxy. A master of the most ancient lightsaber form, Form 1, Kit Fisto was a master at holding off several opponents at once. This approach also allowed for impeccable defense against wielders of several lightsabers, demonstrated by his near defeat of Grievous during the Clone Wars. He was also a master of underwater combat. He heavily utilized the Force to create powerful water currents and modified his saber to work underwater. His defeat by Palpatine was not a fair fight. His powers and lightsaber style were just not well suited against one opponent, using the aggressive Form 7 lightsaber form, especially not on dry land. How did Darth Vader kill so many Jedi? Darth Vader became the most proficient Jedi killer of all time,
hunting down many of the Order's finest who had survived Order 66. As well as being a powerful Force sensitive with an immensely strong cybernetic suit, his knowledge of the Jedi fighting techniques and Force abilities allowed him to exploit fatal Jedi weaknesses. Notably, he exploited their compassion by targeting civilians and Jedi apprentices to lure out his prey, instilling great fear in the remaining Jedi. He used this fear to his advantage, taunting his opponents to further weaken their connection to the light side of the Force, the true source of a Jedi's power. This power also allowed him to see into the minds of his opponents, allowing him to work out the best way of defeating them, giving him a massive advantage over the Jedi.
How did Boba Fett survive the Sarlacc pit? Within both the Star Wars canon and Legends timelines, Boba Fett's unfortunate fall into the Sarlacc pit did not lead to his downfall. In canon, the exact details will likely be shown in the upcoming Book of Boba Fett, although we know it had something to do with Jabba's sail barge exploding and damaging the Sarlacc pit. However, in Legends, Boba's experience inside the Sarlacc is as gruesome as it is strange. Waking up inside the Sarlacc, Boba found himself being slowly digested by the beast. He also found that he now had a telepathic link to the creature's first victim, whose consciousness had long ago merged with the Sarlaccs. After a long conversation, he goaded the creature into a state of fury, causing his jetpack to ignite and explode. This gave Boba enough time to fire some grenades, eventually allowing him to escape.
Who were the original characters in George Lucas's early drafts for Star Wars? The Skywalkers were originally called the Starkillers, and the family was comprised of Kain Starkiller, the father, as well as Anakin and Deke Starkiller, the sons. Luke Skywalker was first designed as a Jedi general in his early 60s who fought for the rebellion, alongside someone called Tarkin. Leia was still a princess, but not of Alderaan, as the planet was the Emperor's capital. However, Darth Vader was still his right-hand man, although looked very different, along with the early designs of the Stormtroopers. C-3PO and R2-D2 were also present, but R2 could talk. Chewbacca, the Prince of Kashyyyk, would befriend Han Solo to board and destroy the Death Star, although Han Solo was a lizard. I'm very glad they changed that part.
What happened to the Jedi who saw Dooku's Sith saber before the Clone Wars? Having recently pledged himself as Sidious's Sith apprentice, Dooku was busy securing alliances for a future war. Arriving on Salust to find a weapon smuggler, he was surprised to find a Jedi Knight already on the planet. The Jedi Knight was a huge fan of Dooku's, who had idolized him as a brilliant Jedi Master as a child. Eventually, Dooku was able to work out that the Jedi was trying to locate the weapon smugglers he had come to form an alliance with. Gaining the young Jedi's trust, he used him to find the location of the smugglers. However, the smugglers surrounded them, and Dooku was forced to ignite his red lightsaber. After killing the smugglers, he used the Force to shoot the young Jedi in the back, preventing him from revealing his true identity as a Sith. Dooku then began negotiations with the smugglers, securing yet another alliance for the Sith.
Did Darth Vader ever try to free the slaves? As a boy, a young Anakin Skywalker had dreams of returning to Tatooine and freeing the slaves. However, Anakin grew up to be the right-hand man of the most brutal ruler the galaxy had ever seen. When he discovered that the Empire was using slaves, he confronted his master. Palpatine was surprisingly understanding, claiming that he had forgot Vader had once been a slave himself. However, he went on to explain that slavery on Tatooine benefited no one but the slave master, but that slavery in the Empire was beneficial to the whole galaxy and a merciful alternative to death. Standing in shocked silence, Vader accepted his master's explanation, and he never brought up the issue of Imperial slavery again. What was the most powerful Force feat ever achieved by a dark-side user? Throughout galactic history, many Sith have achieved ungodly levels of power using the Force. Darth Nihilus's ambitious destruction of whole planets' life force using the dark side is often given as the most powerful Force feat ever achieved. However, Naga Sadow was able to use a dark side ritual that was arguably even more powerful, using Sith alchemy and ancient Sith crystals. The Sith sorcerer was able to rip the core from a star and use it as a projectile. This would also cause the star to go supernova, destroying the whole star system. Naga Sadow is the only dark-side user who was ever able to use this ability without accidentally blowing himself up. One Sith sorcerer attempted to use this ability, but lost control of the star's core, accidentally igniting 9 other stars and consuming her in a deadly inferno. Why was the Darksaber so important to the Mandalorians? By the time of the Imperial era, the Darksaber held great significance to the Mandalorians, akin to Mandalore's mask of the Old Republic era. Whoever owned it was regarded as the rightful ruler of the Mandalorian people. Its creation can be traced back to over 1,000 years before the Clone Wars, when a Mandalorian, Tar Vizsla, joined the Jedi Order. After creating the Darksaber, Tar Vizsla returned to his homeworld to lead his people, eventually becoming Mandalore. After his death, Clan Vizsla stole the Darksaber, and it soon became the symbol
of leadership among the militant faction of the Mandalorians, known as the Death Watch. After the pacifist Mandalorians were defeated during the Clone Wars, the Darksaber regained its importance, and by the time of the Empire, most Mandalorians believed that whoever wielded the Darksaber had the right to claim the Mandalorian throne. What did the different colours of blaster bolt mean? The colour of a blaster bolt depended on the type of blaster gas used as ammunition. Different blaster gases varied in quality, with red being the cheapest but also not very lethal. Blue blaster bolts were ionized, and although this made them more expensive, they were highly effective against droids. Purple and yellow blaster bolts were much more lethal, although they were significantly more expensive. However, the yellow and turquoise bolts used by clone trainees and training droids were completely non-lethal, although it would still hurt a lot if you were hit by one. Green blaster bolts were said to be the most effective. However, this also made it very expensive, meaning the Empire were the only faction to use them extensively.
How powerful was Grandmaster Luke Skywalker in Legends? Luke Skywalker was said to be the most powerful Jedi of all time, realizing the full potential that his father had failed in achieving. In one battle against the Yuuzhan Vong, Luke became one with the Force, essentially becoming a one-man army. Onlookers claimed that he looked as though he was wielding 30 lightsabers at once, as he moved so fast, and his forced pushes were said to level whole armies of the highly force-resistant Vong warriors.
What was the first lightsaber? The lightsaber was considered synonymous with the Jedi and the Sith, and their greatest weapon. However, this was not always the case, and the Jedi, the ancient precursors to the Jedi, used force-imbued swords in combat. However, this would all change with the introduction of the Force Saber by the evil Rakata. These sabers emitted plasma blades like modern lightsabers, but were powered by the dark side of the Force. After the Jedi drove the Rakata from their homeworld, the Order was split in two, some claiming that the Force Sabers and the dark side were necessary for their protection. Others violently disagreed, believing the Jedi should strictly follow the light, with this group going on to form the Jedi Order. What was the most dangerous Sith artifact? Throughout their long history, the Sith imbued many objects with the dark side, giving them dangerous properties. One such ancient artifact was known as the Mur Talisman. Whoever came into possession of this object could turn anyone in the vicinity into a ferocious zombie-like beast known as a Rakghoul, all subservient to the amulet's owner. However, while granting great power, it was a double-edged sword. The amulet contained the spirit of Carnus Mur, one of the original Dark Jedi who founded the Sith Order. Any user of the Mur Talisman would eventually be completely corrupted by his spirit and subservient to him through the dark side.
How did Darth Revan get his Mandalorian mask? Around 4,000 years before the destruction of the first Death Star, the Mandalorians would begin a violent crusade in the Outer Rim, led by the terrifying Mandalore the Ultimate. Under the leadership of his lieutenant and advisor, Cassius Fett, the Mandalorian army would commit one of the worst war crimes of the period, the genocide of the Cathar species. However, one female Mandalorian would speak up against the killing, prompting Cassius Fett to execute her along with the Cathar. Sometime later, Revan would come across the fallen Mandalorian's mask and would receive a vision of what had happened. He would place the helmet upon his head and swear to defeat the Mandalorian threat, despite this being against the Jedi Order's wishes. Why can there only be two Sith? By the time of the Clone Wars, the Jedi Order consisted of over 10,000 beings, so one may assume that an army of Sith would have been beneficial in helping Palpatine defeat them. In the days of the Old Republic, the Sith numbered almost as many as the Jedi, and had a large empire. However, the Sith were never able to achieve dominance over the galaxy for any great length of time. As soon as the Sith Empire had the Jedi on the back foot, lesser Sith would ally together to overthrow the strongest Sith Lords, weakening the Empire overall. This led to Darth Bane ultimately instigating the Rule of Two, the reasoning being that only the strongest Sith would survive, with the apprentice only overcoming the Master if they were more powerful in the dark side. The Sith would also focus on weakening the Republic and the Jedi from the shadows, which eventually of course they did, ultimately leading to the elimination of the Jedi Order by Palpatine.
Lies did the Empire tell about Plo Koon after Order 66? The death of Plo Koon at the hands of the clones was one of the most tragic moments in Star Wars. Plo truly cared about the clones, the Republic, and the Jedi, and many viewed the Jedi Master with the utmost respect. However, the Empire wished to paint all Jedi as evil, including Plo. The official Imperial report stated that Plo had been planning a kamikaze attack against a Neimoidian nursery. Therefore, the clones had been forced to shoot him down, ending the Jedi's life. While this was of course a lie, many in the galaxy hated the Jedi Order, and sadly, this was what most believed until Luke Skywalker cleared his name after the fall of the Empire. Why did the clones love Anakin Skywalker so much? The clones' betrayal of the Jedi came as a surprise to almost all of the Jedi Order, even though it probably shouldn't have. Anti-Jedi sentiment among the clones was pretty common, largely due to the Jedi's poor leadership at the start of the war and because of madmen like Pong Krell. However, some Jedi were hugely popular with the clones under their command. Plo Koon's Wolfpack loved him so much that they even painted an image labelled Plo's Bros on their gunship. Anakin Skywalker was also loved by his men. For the same reason, the Wolfpack loved Plo Koon. Anakin saw his men as human, not just as military units that were expendable. The clones of the 501st came to regard him as another one of their brothers, a Jedi who was unafraid to put himself in danger for the sake of the mission or simply to save clone lives.
What happened to the Kyber Crystal Caves of Ilum after Order 66? Ilum served as a sacred place for the Jedi Order, it being the primary source of the Kyber Crystals that powered their lightsabers. As soon as the Empire rose to power, they began a massive mining operation on Ilum, carving off whole sections of the planet's crust. Most of the Kyber crystals were taken to be used within the focusing beams of the still very secret Death Star superlaser. When visiting the planet about a year after Order 66, Ahsoka noted that the remaining crystals no longer sang to her as they had during the Clone Wars, suggesting the Empire's activities had shrouded the planet in the dark side. How did the Tusken Raiders almost push Obi-Wan to the dark side? On several occasions, Obi-Wan was pushed towards the dark side, wishing to exact his revenge upon Vader and the Emperor. However, it was the Tusken Raiders that would push him closer to the dark side than ever before. The Tuskens had broken into the Lars family home, stealing evaporators from the family. Fearful of the danger this posed to a young Luke, Obi-Wan went to retrieve the evaporators from the Tuskens. Kenobi was attacked by the Tuskens, feeling a deep desire to kill all of them as the horrors of Order 66 flashed before his eyes. However, his Jedi teachings and purpose on Tatooine stopped him from falling to the dark side, and he instead cut off the clothes of the Tuskens, who fled in shame and embarrassment. What was the horrific dark side ability created by the Jedi? The Sith spent many thousands of years concocting horrific dark side abilities to torture and torment their enemies. However, one of the most disturbing and cruel dark side abilities was in fact created by the Jedi Order. Around 11,000 years before the Clone Wars, a group of religious fanatics took control of the Republic. This group, known as the Pious Dia, believed in creating an empire for mankind, and over a 1,000-year period enacted several genocidal crusades against alien species. Eventually, the Jedi helped overthrow this tyrannical government, and a group of Jedi, known as the Jedi Vindicators, were tasked with purging the remaining Pious Dia from the galaxy. The Vindicators began to emphasize justice as an important part of their ideology, developing the Memory Walk Force ability to torture Pious Dia members. This Force ability forced the victim to relive the most painful experience of their life over and over again in their mind, often driving the victim to insanity. What happened when a lightsaber crystal came into contact with Project Blackwing? Project Blackwing was a failed Sith immortality experiment that was accidentally released upon an Imperial research facility. Upon being bitten by a victim of Project Blackwing, the individual would soon become engrossed in powerful hallucinations of a mouth exploding from their chest. Soon after their gruesome death, the Blackwing would take over their nervous system, with the body being added into a coordinated hive mind similar to the Flood from the Halo franchise. Almost every species of plant, animal, and sentient being was susceptible to Project Blackwing, with lightsaber crystals also being affected by it. When the Blackwing project fused with the lightsaber crystal, the blade would become dark black in coloration, emitting a plume of smoke when ignited. Is the Darksaber more powerful than a regular lightsaber, and is it one of a kind? The Darksaber has one of the most distinctive saber designs, reflecting its unique and ancient Mandalorian heritage. Not only is the blade black, it is also shaped more like a traditional sword. However, the Darksaber was not the only weapon of this kind. Broadsabers were similar in design to the Darksaber, with a broader and flatter blade. These blades were unpopular with the Jedi, who saw them as inferior to the traditional saber, which had an omnidirectional cutting edge. However, while this may be a disadvantage to users of more extravagant and complex lightsaber forms, users of Form 1 could benefit immensely from the flat blade. The concentration of energy along one blade edge increased the heat intensity significantly, greatly benefiting the precise and measured strikes of a Form 1 user. Where are humans from in Star Wars? Although little evidence remains, it is widely accepted that humanity developed within the core worlds. Evidence suggests that they likely evolved from another humanoid species known as the Zell on the planet Notron, soon to be renamed Coruscant. The Zell were in near constant war with another species named the Tang, who later renamed themselves the Mandalorians. Some argue that it was the Ancient Ones who guided the Zell eventually turning them into the humans. There is some evidence for this. The artificially created Corellian system was known to have humans present before the advent of the hyperdrive on Coruscant, suggesting some degree of meddling by the Celestials. Whatever humanity's true origin, it is unlikely to ever be fully revealed.
Why did the Sith use red lightsabers? Apart from a very small minority, Sith solely utilized red blades. To find and connect with the Kyber crystal, a Jedi must become one with the Force. However, this was not the way of the Sith, who sought to dominate the Force. In Legends, the Sith created their own synthetic Kyber crystals as a show of dominance over the Force itself. The red crystals were the easiest to synthesize, creating the iconic red blade. However, in canon, the red blade was created through the domination of the Kyber crystal itself. The Sith would pour their anger and hate into the crystal, in a process known as bleeding, transforming it into its iconic red coloration. What happened when Boba Fett told Darth Vader Luke Skywalker's name? After murdering and torturing his way through Tatooine, Boba Fett was finally able to learn the name of the rebel pilot who had recently destroyed the Death Star, ambushing Luke Skywalker in Obi-Wan Kenobi's old hut. Boba was almost successful in capturing the aspiring Jedi. However, Luke ignited his lightsaber and the two engaged in a vicious fight. Eventually, Luke knocked the bounty hunter unconscious and escaped, with Boba forced to return to Vader empty-handed. The Dark Lord stated his disappointment, but Boba Fett offered him one useful piece of information: Luke Skywalker's name. Vader did not respond, with Boba soon working out that he should leave. Upon realizing he had a son and he was the source of the Death Star's destruction, Vader was filled with rage. Clenching his fist, the Star Destroyer's windows started to crack before he uttered his own long-forgotten name, Skywalker.